You're with Q&A. New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters is accusing Prime Minister John Key of flip-flopping like a pair of wet jandals over the Dotcom investigation, and he wants a commission of inquiry. Good morning, Mr. Peters. Don't we already know what's happened? Don't we have enough information?
Of course you don't know what's happened, and the public is being asked to believe an incredible set of circumstances. 15 meetings with GCSB. Every minister seemed to have known. 5 departmental heads seem to have known. Everybody seems to have known but the Prime Minister. Let me tell you this. Offshore, we're regarded as a Mickey Mouse joke now by the United States, and I believe Australia as well. And the other bad fallout from that is that those countries to whom we used to say, look, we can't be heavy, and I won't name those countries, but who wanted us to do things, will now say, yes, you can. So we've lost influence there. But my real point is this. The Prime Minister pretends not to have known this person, excepting he, a full 7 months after the Dotcom got his residency and was starting to into his business, stops off deliberately in LA for a dinner with the senior executives of Warner Brothers, an interest which, like others in Hollywood, were starting to lose hundreds of millions and possibly billions of dollars. Don't tell me they never raised Dotcom and the threat to them at those meetings. It's incredible to believe. So we don't know that, and I'm not arguing necessarily for a commission of inquiry, but an inquiry that is sensitive to our security needs, because the world's a very evil place, but someone who has got the trust of the public to get to the truth.
So do you have evidence of a cover-up, that there's been a cover-up?
Well, look, the other conclusion is a massive incompetence. You cannot have a detective inspector like Wormold go there in a trial and apparently commit perjury and have the police cover it up. He has to explain, why did you commit perjury, or is there a reason that you could be accused of committing perjury? Did you make a mistake? This cannot be.
Nothing on that has been proven yet, though. Nothing on that side of it has been proven. Bill English, should Bill English have asked more questions?
He said there was no other surveillance going on, and what's proven was that government communications Security Bureau was conducting surveillance.
Bill English, should he have asked more questions?
Look, these people come up to you from the GCSB. They have a file in each case. That file lays out the case. Your job is to read that file, and it's top secret, and to ask questions about it. I do not believe they could not have known what the Prime Minister, who's signing out these bugging warrants, could not possibly have known. No former Prime Minister would believe that. Now, you know, the current Foreign Affairs Minister and the Prime Minister are the people most likely to do that, probably more from the Foreign Ministry sometimes. But you could not possibly not know that a file came over your desk, and given it's very serious, you're bugging someone, that you would usually send a Western politician into the realms of concern, because it's a serious matter of privacy. That's why you take the job seriously.
Do there need to be more safeguards, more oversights on the likes of the SIS, the GCSB? Is there just not enough at the moment?
Well, there is since 2003, as Sir Geoffrey Palmer just pointed out. But it requires the Minister to read the files, and I don't believe that you could not have read those files. I mean, who would receive a serious officer from the Government Communications Security Service and not take it seriously? Because what they're after is a massive breach of the privacy if it's not lawful in this country.
John Key said he wasn't told until September 17th.
I don't believe that. Unless he said, look, my deal with you, Mr. English, is better you don't tell me. Now, just with respect to Sir Geoffrey, there's coded ways you can get your information across back to the Prime Minister. I used to get it offshore. One guy would be charged with that code and given top security clearance. So things have moved on from Sir Geoffrey's day.
So you were saying, though, that type of thing was in place when you were Deputy Prime Minister, when you were Foreign Minister?
No doubt of it, yes.
OK, very finally, very quickly, is this going to head to court, and if it does, how much could this end up costing?
Well, I said so a long time ago. I've not been wise after the event, but there was a serious case in Australia that found, in a very similar, like almost on all fours of this case, that it's not the provider that's guilty of the crime, it's the person who uses the information provided. Now, Dotcom, I think, is going to be lining up the New Zealand taxpayer for a lot of money, and we're all going to pay to someone who should never have been allowed to get into this country in the first place, he bought his way in, didn't survive, for example, the body mass fat index. All that was ignored just because he was someone with money. It's revolting, and it's made us look like a joke. I know a lot of people out there think that he's a hero, but here's another bit. If you were a writer or a songwriter and he stole your property, would you think him such a Robin Hood now?
All right. New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters, thank you for your time. Back now to our panel, Raymond Miller, Fran O'Sullivan, Mike Williams. Well, I join you, Raymond. Tell us whether the government can put this behind them, or will Ms Peters get further action here?
Well, it's very hard to imagine the government being able to put this behind them because there are calls right now for some sort of investigation. And I think there probably needs to be, I'm not saying that because Winston happens to be 6 feet away from me.
That's 4.
4 feet. But really, there are a lot of unanswered questions. I've always believed that we live dangerously as a democracy in New Zealand because there aren't the checks and balances, not just of the government, but government agencies. And I do think when it comes to the police, the SIS, the GCSB, there needs to be some sort of monitoring agency that is well funded. It may be a quasi-judicial body, but certainly when things like this come up, it's not that I don't believe the Prime Minister's story, it's simply that I think he hasn't been attentive to what's been going on, despite the fact that Dotcom has been in the news for the best part of a year.
Mike, what do you make of Bill English's part in all this and how he's handled it? Should he have read further and asked more questions?
Look, I think both the Herald on Sunday and the Sunday Star Times use the same phrase about this whole fiasco, and that is that Bill English and John Key were asleep at the wheel. Now, I happen to think the system would have worked perfectly well had those two gentlemen asked a few leading questions. And it looks as though that John Key's refusal to read the report on John Banks also extends to the background material on the Dotcom thing. I mean, this is a shambles. It's a fiasco. It's internationally embarrassing for us at a time when we don't need it to be, when we're trying to get a seat on the United Nations. And it really goes back to the incompetence of the people at the top.
That's the thing as well, isn't it? It is international. We are on the radar because of who Kim.com is, because of America's involvement. We do look bits of Muppets, don't we?
Well, we do, and you know, America actually is very grateful for New Zealand for the actions it's taken, and even visiting senators like Max Baucus have made that clear when they've come to town in private situations. So, I mean, the government's got to be very careful about this, because I do agree with Winston Peters. I do not think Kim.com should ever have been allowed to come into this country to buy his way in. He had a record before he came here. He didn't pass the sniff test when it came to buying a house, but he could buy essentially a permanent residency, which has enabled him, you know, to escape probably the surveillance that would have been legal. For instance, if he didn't have that.
In the broad sense, if Paul Davison hadn't done some digging and found this, would we have ever found out about this?
And this is the worry.
Yeah.
This is the worry about the whole thing. If for every one of these that we hear about, we then ask questions, were there others? It's a funny thing, you know, it does reflect to some extent on the leadership of John Key. He's got by up until now on the popularity of being a genial, easygoing sort of a guy. Yeah. But, Fran, you've written about this, the need to really be attentive to the portfolios you're responsible for. And you know, you really, sometimes I think, you know, you need to put the fear of God into people. And I don't know how good he is at that, but he certainly, I think, should, if you set a climate where people know that, you know, your minister is checking up on everything, you're more likely to be careful. If it's a back-off type thing, then anything can go.
Mike, if ever there was a case to do that, not be the relaxed guy, not be the genial leader, you'd think now would be it. This would be the case.
Yeah, I think that I was talking to a friend yesterday that when the Australians went off Kevin Rudd, all of his positives became negatives. For example, attention to detail became control freak. Okay, a similar sort of thing is happening with John Key, and the laid back is turning into asleep at the wheel. Now, I think he can recover from this, and in the earlier discussion, it was pointed out that this Kim.com schmozzle did not occur during the capture period of the poll that we talked about earlier. So I think they could take a hit out of this, but I think Key has got to tighten up his act. I think he's got to improve his relationship with his deputy. It just seems utterly incredible to me that they didn't natter about this, and I don't accept Geoffrey Palmer's point. I think there is secure methods of communication these days.
Fran, if we put a pin in this now and go, right, well, that's the end of it, but we're most likely not. It is probably going to hit to court.
Yes, it will go to court, and but the interesting question is, there's been illegality by the GCSB. Are they going to be charged? You know, does someone face
who
criminal
charges
charges there? And who charges them? Because the police fed the wrong information anyway. So,
Usually the SFO.
But there's another issue, I think. And Key, when I was up in Japan on the recent trip, he told me then that he was planning to go to the United States, and a trip's coming up very soon to Los Angeles, where he's going to be talking with some of the other studios, and I doubt Warner's will be on it necessarily. But how does he handle all of that? I mean, it's inevitable that this whole issue of internet, cyber, criminal, all the rest will come up, and Kim.com. I mean, the whole LA has been seized by this. So I want to know, how does he handle that offshore? What does he say when reporters ask him?
I think that's a very good point.
I'll have to leave that one there
It
too.
ought to be an open and shut case.
Yeah.
Well, still to come, more from the panel, but next, Foreign Affairs Minister Murray McCulloch in New York campaigning hard for a seat on the Security Council. That's next.